It's time for the Brouhaha Sports Show. Brouhaha Sports with award-winning sports writer Dale McKee and co-host Marshall Wood. Talking sports with the legends of the game and famous sports personalities. Brouhaha. Now to Marshall and Dale with tonight's guest.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Brouhaha. Marshall Wood and Dale McKee. Oh man, we are in some football business, Dale, and we got all kind of stuff going on. But before we get to that, well, this is football. Big news.
What?
Deion Sanders.
Who is that?
Some football coach has been
just
up here
kind of rented a place and left us.
I tell you what, he did a really good job.
He did an awesome job, and you know what? I was telling somebody today. Yeah, I'm sad he left, and said, well, he just used us. But you know, everybody uses somebody in the coaching profession. You gotta start out small and work yourself up. But he gave all hope to all those guys coaching at those black colleges that, hey, you can move up if you succeed. Doesn't matter where you are, even a smaller school. Hey, if you got the resume, I mean, the guy that just got the Cincinnati job, he was over at a small school over there in Carolina a couple years ago, and you know, you're looking at all these young coaches that like at Coastal Carolina. You know, if he does a good job, he's gonna move up, and the guy at Troy, the guy at
Southern Miss.
Yeah, they all gonna move up. You know, but you got to start out somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, so. But I'm gonna tell you what, he left us better than he found us.
He sure did.
I mean, he really did. And you know, I can't fault him. He was making $600,000 at Jackson State. He's gonna make over $5 million up there, and he's gonna have better facilities. He's gonna have a, probably a little bit more money to work with the NIL and all that kind of stuff.
And he's in the Pac-12. And the Southern Cal and UCLA are leaving the Pac-12, and who knows? 3 years from now, Deion may win the Pac-12. Wouldn't surprise me.
I tell you what, he's got those two Washington schools and those two Oregon schools he's gonna have to fool with, but those, I guess it's Utah and the two Arizona schools. So he's got his hands full. But you know what? I think after watching him do what he did at Jackson State, I got confidence in the man. I think he's got character, and I think he's got ethics, and he brings a great message.
Man, he teaches those kids core values. He teaches them. That's what he's all about. And he was talking to the bunch out there in Colorado, and he was laying the law down.
He taught them Jackson State young men about life.
Yeah. Well, another coaching change. Hugh Freeze is back in the SEC, baby.
I've heard that name before.
Yeah.
I've heard that name.
What do you think about that?
Well, did it surprise you? It didn't.
Not a bit.
Not a bit.
Not a bit.
I think he really had it in the bag after Arkansas. I really do. You know? Did you? I ran into somebody this weekend in Hattiesburg at State Championship. He was a TV commentator from Columbus. And he's the one that tweeted out that Kiffin was going to be hired at Auburn on that Friday after the Egg Bowl. And so I was talking to him because Kiffin was down there earlier in the day that day. Him and the defensive coordinator at Alabama had come to see the Perkins boy from Raleigh. And they were standing in the end zone. And I said, well, if you got down here a little bit earlier, you were seeing your buddy you tweeted out about. And he said, well, he sent me a gift basket and told me no hard feelings. I said, well, why's he got hard feelings against you? You got him about a $2 million raise there, buddy. So I wanted to bring that in on the show tonight. I thought that was interesting.
That is good. That's good. Did you get him straightened out? Did you give him any pointers?
No, I just, I didn't get into that. It was a good conversation because everybody was teasing him about it, So
is he pretty funny in person? Pretty good sport.
Yeah, he's a young guy, and he's from. I believe he said he was from Penn State, if I'm not mistaken. There was a couple of them young guys this year. I think he was.
We talking about Kiffin?
No, I'm talking about the TV announcer. I'm sorry.
Oh, I thought you was talking about Lane Kiffin.
No, Kiffin didn't really intermingle with anybody.
Oh, okay.
You know, he just kind of stood there with like a statue, and everybody tried to keep people away from him. Like, we had royalty there in Hattiesburg. We had royalty. We had the Ole Miss football coach in Hattiesburg at USM. When's the last time that happened?
I don't know, but
Probably 1976.
Was the Mississippi State coach up there?
Didn't see him.
Yeah.
Didn't see him now.
He talk about beating your own drum and dancing to you with your own band. Now Leach is one, isn't he?
Yeah.
I tell you what, he's got him finished in the top 25. That's the only school in Mississippi, baby.
Yeah, he by winning that Egg Bowl, that they gave him another year.
Sure. Well, Dale, who we got tonight to talk about?
We got Andrew Abadie from Pine Belt Sports in Hattiesburg. They're a little paper down there. It's basically a weekly paper, and they cover Southern Miss, and they cover all the high schools in that area. Okay. But he was with me at state championships this week, and I can verify this, that he attended all 6 games like I did.
All right.
And they were long.
Yeah.
I mean, they were like good 12-hour days for us for sure.
Good deal. Well, we're excited about hearing you two share what y'all learned up there and some other things this over the past weekend. But let's take a break right now to hear from our sponsor, and Dale and I'll be back with tonight's guest right after this commercial.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome to the show, Andrew. How you doing today, Andrew?
I'm doing all right, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, long weekend I saw that you had. You probably worked from sun up to sundown, didn't you?
You and me both.
There you go. Well,
yeah, it was a long, fun weekend.
Yeah, well, you probably had a little more work to do than I did. Well, anyway, just give us a recap of what you saw and some of the highlights of the state championships games. You can start 1A, work your way up to 6A.
So, yeah, Bay Springs, like we all guessed, was going to repeat as a state champion. And sure enough, they did. And their defense just, they really smothered Mick Evans. And it was kind of a lopsided game. And it was actually the second game of the day, not to go out of order, but, the first game was the 3A game, which was absolutely electric. And then we have this blowout game to follow. But to stick to the order of appearance, yeah, Bay Springs, they've done what they did what they do all season, which was just their defense just smothers people, and McEvans was just out physical the whole time. And then we jumped to 2A, and that was kind of another blowout. Charleston and Scott Central for the second year in a row. Scott Central just basically put on a clinic. Their offense was pretty ridiculous with their quarterback, who's maybe 5'9". I think that's what they have him listed as. Quez Goss, who he threw for 281 yards, 5 touchdowns. His 2 receivers, Javion Butler, who's actually a Southern Miss commit, and then Edwards. They had 8 catches for 281 and 5 touchdowns. I mean, it was not much of a contest. And then perhaps probably the best game of the slate this year was Noxubee County and Raleigh, of course, and that was a complete shootout. I mean, I think there was points between the two teams by halftime, so that was a lot of fun to watch. We saw the Mississippi's top recruit, Centurion Perkins. I mean, he pretty much showed why he's the top recruit. I mean, the term "man amongst boys" was thrown around a lot in the press box, and he put on a show as well. And then you go to 4A. It was 2 years in a row that the 4A state championship came down to a kick. Mendenhall had a late comeback. I mean, it was kind of a boring game up until the last 3 minutes or so. It was just a defensive slugfest. Louisville, it was 14-6 by the end of the first quarter, and it stayed like that till about the last 3 minutes of the game. And it looked like Louisville was going to blow it. Mendenhall scored late. They had a chance to potentially set up either a field goal or score with about a minute to go. They turned it over, and Louisville somehow drives inside the 20 and they kick a game winner. So that was a pretty exciting ending for that. I believe Louisville has now won 11 state championships, which is tied for the most in Mississippi. And then you go to 5A, another great game. West Point Picayune, that was a rematch of last year, and it did not disappoint like last year's game. West Point went up 14-6. Dante Doel, who everybody I'm sure has heard of at this point, Picayune's great running back, committed to Oregon, showed why he was Mr. 5A football, and he basically helped guide the second half comeback. And then 6A was just an absolute stunner, with Starkville just beating up on Brandon. I know the final score might say it was close, but it was I think it was 42-10 heading into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, of course, you mentioned Perkins and the running back at Picayune. And did you see anybody that might not be on anybody's radar that people might make a phone call to? Anybody show out for in your regards, a lineman or linebacker or anything like that?
Well, I tell you one that kind of stood out to me is, you go back to the Scott Central game, and everybody kind of knows who Javion Butler is. I mean, he's a 6'5" guy. I mean, he looks the part of a stud wide receiver. But, I don't think anybody's talking about number 7, Edwards, and Travius Edwards. He was his breakaway speed was very, very impressive. I mean, he's only about 6'2", so I don't think the eyes necessarily drift to him. But, my gosh, he was so sneaky quick. I mean, he was I think a guy that's kind of flying under the radar. I know another kid that received an offer from Southern Miss after the game was Noxubee County's quarterback, who was just a sophomore. But I tell you what, if you're looking at him, you wouldn't know it. I thought he was a senior because he looked like a grown man to me. But Mario Taylor, just a sophomore, he's about 6'1", 6'2". I mean, gosh, he was exciting to watch. Could move around. You could see he could do his reads. I think that's going to be a name we are going to hear for the next couple of years, and I'm sure it's not going to be the last time Noxubee County, as long as he's quarterback, will be in the state championship. That was about the two that really stuck out to me that nobody's really been talking about, though.
Yeah, the Noxubee County guy, I remember one pass that he made. He set up from his 5 on the replay. I was watching after it live because I wanted to see how far he threw it. But he threw it from the 5 to the other 40, and he hit the receiver on the dead run, and the guy went on in for the touchdown, I believe. And it was a phenomenal pass. I mean, that's 55 yards in the air. And
he was just insanely impressive.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, let's get into the college bowls. Tell us we'll start with Southern Miss and what you think about them going to a bowl in Will Hall second year. That's quite an achievement, isn't it?
Yeah, most definitely. I had kind of put this team around 5 or 6 wins. I mean, the second half of their schedule was kind of brutal in terms of, Sun Belt was a really good league this year, and we kind of figured it was going to come down to the ULM game. They took care of business, and I think this is definitely steps in the right direction. This team easily could have had maybe 7 or 8 wins. I mean, they lost a few games by one score. So there's still a lot of building to do. They are, as Will Hall will say, they are not a finished product, and that is very true. I mean, keep in mind, they got to 6 wins with, I think they've had 4 different guys play quarterback this year, maybe 3. Yeah, I'm going to say 3, not including the super back. Their offensive line it's still kind of an issue. It's still shuffling. I mean, and they're going to have to replace a lot on defense next season. But they're still trending towards the right way. And my biggest thing for Southern Miss was I wanted to see them get a winnable bowl game because, at the end of last year, they won their last 2 games, and it felt like that momentum carried over into this season. And you kind of want to, you hope you kind of see that again if they can win this bowl game, which they get a very favorable matchup against 5 and 7 Rice. And ironically enough, because this is in Mobile, it's played on South Alabama's campus on Hancock-Whitney Stadium. If football fans remember, it is where Will Hall made a debut in a kind of embarrassing 31-7 loss to South Alabama, where Will Hall famously kind of now famously called himself a fraud after that loss. So I'd like to see a kind of a small redemption story in there.
There you go. I remember that quote, and unfortunately that ball game too. Just tell us what you think about Ole Miss and kind of how they maybe ended the season, and how Mississippi State kind of ended the season there.
Well, gosh, I figure Ole Miss. Who would have thought Lane Kiffin was going to stay in Oxford, huh?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that you could tell that was kind of, that sideshow feels like it kind of interrupted the Rebels' last half of the season. They lost 3 of the last 4, and they're kind of playing in a bowl game that I feel like it's not really much to play for. They're playing Texas Tech. They're going to the Texas Bowl. It's familiar. It feels like Ole Miss ends up there quite often for bowl games. Of course you want to win it. You want to get to 9 wins. But yeah, you just got to feel like that locker room has to feel very off after all of the drama with Lane Kiffin and the courting to Auburn that didn't happen. So I'm curious to see how Ole Miss kind of responds. I mean, maybe getting a couple weeks off, they'll be able to reset a little. But gosh, it was such a weird ending to their season with all of that drama. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of Ole Miss. That one is a coin flip. It just seems like they got out to that. I think it was an 8-0 start, and then the wheels just fell off. So yeah, and then of course you got Mississippi State. Of course they get the Egg Bowl win, which is always great. They're going to play Illinois, and I think that's a pretty good matchup for Mississippi State. They ended up in the final, or the second to last college football playoff rankings at, I think, number 22. So I think that's a very winnable game for Mississippi State. And again, you kind of have seen Mike Leach trend upwards in his first few seasons at Mississippi State.
Did you think that Egg Bowl was a must-win for Mike Leach in his 3rd year?
Yeah, I kind of did. Just because, you definitely want the 8 wins, of course. That's always a good look. But, it's like you lose 3 years in a row, and then, if you lose that game, you're 7-5. You definitely think it would have, the seat would have been hot maybe a little bit going into next year, especially given with how ridiculous the bar seems to have jumped for a lot of college football coaches. And, of course, it rightfully should be high in the SEC, where it kind of has to be high. But, yeah, I definitely think that he kind of gave himself the needed cushion or threw some ice on the hot seat. Not that it was really hot to begin with, but I think that discussion definitely would have begun to have happened.
That's probably a very, very true statement there that you made. Of course, everybody kind of expected what happened in Jackson with Coach Prime going to Colorado, but do you think he will be a good fit for Colorado? Was this the best place he could have landed?
I mean, considering how much money they're going to throw at him, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to make like $5 million a year, which is insane. Here's the thing with Coach Prime, and the transfer portal really caters to the kind of coach he is. He's not exactly the best X's and O's coach, but he's going to pull. If he has the better talent on the field, he's going to win. And I think he's going to have his ties to Texas. I think he's got some solid recruiting ground in Mississippi now. He doesn't really. He recruits from out of state to begin with. Like if you go look at Jackson State's roster, there's maybe 5 Mississippi kids on there. So I think that's not going to be a problem. And here's the other thing: Colorado, the Pac-12 isn't exactly. It's not exactly a powerhouse league right now. I mean, it's maybe 1 or 2 teams and then the rest. So I definitely think there's room to grow. It seems like the Colorado athletic department's ready to strongly commit to the athletic program. So you can't blame him for leaving for that gig. I do question how he left it with not even doing a post-game press conference after going undefeated and winning the SWAC championship. I mean, I thought that was a little silly, but the results are there at the end of the day.
All right. Did you think they got the 4? Now let me state this to you. Now you're a sports writer. You're not a lawyer, so don't read between the lines too much here. Okay. Did the four best teams, are they in the playoff?
I think so. I think we can all agree Georgia and Michigan were no-brainers. I thought TCU deserved it, even though look at TCU. They lost by 3 in overtime in the conference championship. It's why Notre Dame doesn't play a conference championship, so they can't get punished for it. Neither TCU should have been punished for it either. So I thought TCU was deserving. I know then it comes down to Ohio State and Alabama, and I am not one to really cater to the Buckeyes. I definitely think Alabama played the tougher schedule, but I feel like Ohio State kind of had the same argument that Alabama's had in the past to be the 4 seed, which is that they lost to another college football playoff caliber team that was in the top 5, much less a rival, and they shouldn't be punished for that. And I feel like Ohio State kind of in the same spot. I know the final score said it was a little bit bigger, but it was a much closer game in the fourth quarter, at the start of the fourth quarter. So I do think they got it right. I don't like to see 2 lost teams in there if it's avoidable. But I do think it could have been a lot crazier if Michigan loses that conference championship, because the Purdue was giving them all they wanted in that first half, and it was. But I do think they got it right at the end of the day.
Let me ask you this. Now, this show, we're all smiling here now. It's called the Brouhaha, you know what I mean? So I'm going to ask you a question.
Oh, yeah.
If Alabama and TCU were to play in 2 weeks, who would win?
Gosh, I want to say Alabama, but it's hard to ignore what TCU has done this year.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a good game. I also think Alabama is not their typical selves this season. It seems like their defense is not quite what it usually is. I think it would be like if I was an odds maker, I would maybe put like a 1-point favorite, depending on where the game was too. Because if it's like in Texas somewhere, probably TCU might have a bit of a home field advantage. I don't know. It's a good coin flip. I think it'd be a great game. I know that much.
Yeah.
All right. Let me ask you one other thing. They've got so many college teams and they got so many great players. But who do you think will be some of the candidates that go to New York for the Heisman this weekend?
Gosh, I was trying to think of that, just kind of by myself, not knowing that you'd ask me that. And it feels like it's almost a weak year for the Heisman. Like, there's no, I feel like there's a couple definitives, like with Caleb Williams at USC, who I don't think he's the Heisman winner. I think maybe Max Duggan could be. I think he's your favorite if TCU gets to the. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. I like I said, it feels like in past years that it was a lot easier and definitive to say. And I don't know if this Heisman race is just. It's been a weird year in football. Period. And yeah, I don't know. Those would be my top 2 for sure. Kind of no-brainers.
I want to throw another question. We're going to go back to the high school level in a minute. We're going to cross the state lines and ease over into Alabama. Now, I want to hear what both of you guys have to say about this, because Thompson, Alabama, is a high school that played and won a state championship the other night. I think they've won 4 7A championships in a row. They're the most dominant high school football team in Alabama, if I'm reading this correctly. They won a state championship last Thursday night with an 8th grade quarterback that threw a record number of touchdown passes. I think Dale says 5. He's got 5 fingers up in a state championship game. They also had a guy playing on the defensive side that was an 8th grader. Can you fathom that? I mean, is that crazy, or is it just me?
No, it's crazy. Now, I didn't know they had another 8th grader playing, but I looked at the quarterback, and you wouldn't know he was in the 8th grade. I'll tell you that much. Yeah. I think if I was standing next to him, people would think he's the older guy. But it's insane where the talent level has jumped in years, and you're starting to see more and more younger players get opportunities. Maybe not so much in the at 8th grade. I still can't fathom that. But in my day of covering like Oak Grove, I've seen a good bit of freshmen deservingly have earned starting jobs, and some of those guys are considered some of the top recruits in the state now. But yeah, no, 8th grade is it might be a little ridiculous, especially in that classification. In the lower ones, I could kind of see it, but in 7A football, that's a bit insane.
There's more. You're talking about recruiting and the younger kids getting like these great offers and everything, but we really don't get much Southern Miss news on commitments and things. You can kind of read these boards about Ole Miss and State. So and so commits, and sometimes for some reason I don't know what it is. It doesn't show up on mine. But how many commitments does Southern Miss may have in football?
Ooh, that is a good question, especially now with everybody jumping into the portal. I want to say, I was just debating on looking at this right before you guys called. I don't have it definitively in front of me, but I do know what they need.
Well, tell us what they need.
Come on with it.
Hey, tell us the needs, okay? Not the wants, but the needs.
They need a quarterback, and I know that is the top priority. I know they have their eyes set on a couple somewhat local quarterbacks that have gone in the portal without giving too much away. But yeah, you have to think anybody who has played somewhat decent Division I football as a quarterback is 100% a somebody they're going to go after. That's the thing too. Southern Miss I haven't really seen that many freshmen or incoming freshmen be commit because everybody's and it's like this for everyone. Everybody's so hung up with the transfer portal as they should be, and you have to what you have to watch for with Southern Miss is if a kid is from Mississippi, in the Power 5 level especially, and they hit the portal, Will Hall is going after them. That is what he did last year when he got so many Ole Miss and Mississippi State guys, and you can sure bet he's going to do it again with the Ole Miss and Mississippi State guys that have already gone into the portal. And that's kind of the footprint. Nobody's really going after high school players as much, which is kind of sad to see. But, in terms of high school freshmen, I do know they've got J.Q. Gray from Oak Grove, who is probably one of the fastest kids in the state. He's not the biggest guy around, but he's like a running back.
We saw how fast that guy was. In Wayne County, yeah. Boy, he's a good one.
Yes, he is electric to watch. I'm kind of glad Southern Miss he's committed to USM. He wanted to be a local guy, and he's a great kid too. Soft-spoken, but gosh, he's got determination to say the least. I know they've got the quarterback from MRA who. I think that's a guy who could come in and, maybe even battle for a starting role. Quarterback and offensive line they're top two. That's the top of the list. I would think. Let's see. Wes Jones kid, Matthew Nixon, wide receiver, and then like I mentioned, there's a offensive lineman Luke Rogers, who is the brother of you guys know, right?
Luke. Luke
there you
Rogers. Go. Has he got a brother named Will?
Yes.
Okay.
Will Rogers is his brother, who is an offensive lineman.
He was a big old boy, too, and he's a lot bigger than Will.
Yeah, I think he's like 300, which is insane. Yeah. But that's also normal now, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so.
And then I know there was a linebacker from Corinth that was that committed recently. That's all I've got on the top of my head. But yeah, that's the recruiting picture, I think, for Southern Miss.
Well, I've been around this recruiting for a long time in Mississippi. They used to sign 40, and then they narrowed it down to 28, and then I don't know what it is, 25, and then there's a limit on how many you can have on scholarship, like 85. But in this day and the time, I think you hit it on the spot. It's going to be almost like a card game to a certain extent, is that if you go out and get these high school kids, then you may hurt yourself in the transfer portal because you may have too many high school kids on scholarship. So, it's going to be different.
Well, listen, guys, I hate to break the party up, but we're out of time, Andrew. I told you that's what I do, so I'm doing my thing.
No problem.
Listen,
no problem.
we really appreciate you taking time to be with us. I'm going to ask you to hang on for a minute. Don't hang up because we're out of time for the show. So I'm going to go ahead and sign us off, and Dale and I are going to sign off. But we'll be with you in a minute. Dale, anything you want to say as we get ready?
Well, I was going to get Andrew to tell folks if they wanted to follow his writing in the Hattiesburg area, because we play a lot of those teams down there. How would they follow you, Andrew?
You can follow me on Twitter at Andrew Abadie. That's Abadie for Southern Miss coverage. And then you can just find Pine Belt Sports on all platforms for all of our high school coverage.
Okay.
Very good.
That's pretty simple.
Pretty simple. Hang on with us, Andrew. We'll be back. But Dale, you know what time it is, don't you?
Is it time to go?
It's time for you.
It is?
Mm-hmm.
Goodbye, Dale.
And we'll see you. And we'll see you next week for more of the Brouhaha. Take us out of here, Jamie.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
You've been listening to the Brouhaha with Dale McKee and Marshall Wood. Heard Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. on WABO. For more of the Brouhaha, follow us during the week on Facebook and WABO.